Every Who down in Whoville liked Christmas a lot, but the Grinch, who lived just north of Whoville, did not. The Grinch hated Christmas, the whole Christmas season. Now please don't ask why. No one quite knows the reason. It could be his head wasn't screwed on just right. It could be, perhaps, that his shoes were too tight. But I think that the most likely reason of all may have been that his heart was 2 sizes too small. Whatever the reason, his heart or his shoes, he stood there on Christmas Eve, hating the Whos, staring down from his cave with a sour, Grinchy frown at the warm, lighted windows below in their town. For he knew every Who down in Whoville beneath was busy now, hanging a mistletoe wreath. And they're hanging their stockings, he snarled with a sneer. Tomorrow is Christmas, it's practically here. Then he growled, with his Grinch fingers nervously drumming, I must find some way to stop Christmas from coming. For tomorrow, he knew, all the Who girls and boys would wake bright and early. They'd rush for their toys. And then, oh, the noise. Oh, the noise, 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 noise. That's one thing he hated. The noise, 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 noise. They would feast on Who pudding and rare Who roast beast, which was something the Grinch couldn't stand in the least. And then they'd do something he liked least of all. Every Who down in Whoville, the tall and the small, would stand close together with Christmas bells ringing. They'd stand hand in hand, and the Whos would start singing. The more the Grinch thought, I must stop this whole thing. Why, for 53 years I've put up with it now. I must stop this Christmas from coming. But how? Then he got an idea. An awful idea. The Grinch got a wonderful, awful idea. I know just what to do. The Grinch laughed in his throat, and he made a quick Santa Claus hat and a coat. And he chuckled and clucked. What a great Grinchy trick. With this coat and this hat, I look just like Saint Nick. All I need is a reindeer. The Grinch looked around, but since reindeer are scarce, there was none to be found. Did that stop the old Grinch? No. The Grinch simply said, if I can't find a reindeer, I'll make one instead. So he called his dog, Max. Then he took some red thread, and he tied a big horn on the top of his head. Then he loaded some bags and some old empty sacks on a ramshackle sleigh, and he hitched up old Max. Then the Grinch said, and the sleigh started down toward the homes where the Whos lay a snooze in their town. All their windows were dark. Quiet snow filled the air. All the Whos were all dreaming sweet dreams without care. When he came to the first little house on the square, "This is stop number 1," the old Grinchy Claus hissed. And he climbed to the roof, empty bags in his fist. Then he slid down the chimney, a rather tight pinch. But if Santa could do it, then so could the Grinch. He got stuck only once, for a moment or two. Then he stuck his head out of the fireplace flue, where the little Who stockings all hung in a row. These stockings, he grinned, are the first things to go. Then he slithered and slunk, with a smile most unpleasant, around the whole room, and he took every present. Pop guns and bicycles, roller skates, drums, checkerboards, tricycles, popcorn, and plums, and he stuffed them in bags. Then the Grinch, very nimbly, stuffed all the bags one by one up the chimney. Then he slunk to the icebox. He took the Who's feast. He took the Who pudding. He took the roast beast. He cleaned out that icebox as quick as a flash. Why, that Grinch even took their last can of Who hash. Then he stuffed all the food up the chimney with glee. And now, grinned the Grinch, I will stuff up the tree. And the Grinch grabbed the tree, and he started to shove, when he heard a small sound like the coo of a dove. He turned around fast. Little Cindy Lou who was not more than 2. The Grinch had been caught by this tiny Who daughter, who'd got out of bed for a cup of cold water. She stared at the Grinch and said, "Santa Claus, why? Why are you taking our Christmas tree? Why?" But you know, that old Grinch was so smart and so slick, he thought up a lie, and he thought it up quick. "Why, my sweet little tot," the fake Santa Claus lied, "there's a light on this tree that won't light on one side. So I'm taking it home to my workshop, my dear. I'll fix it up there, then I'll bring it back here." And his fib fooled the child. Then he patted her head, and he got her a drink, and he sent her to bed. And when Cindy Lou Who went to bed with her cup, he went to the chimney and stuffed the tree up. Then the last thing he took was the log for their fire. Then he went up the chimney himself, the old liar. On their walls he left nothing but hooks and some wire, and the one speck of food that he left in the house was a crumb that was even too small for a mouse. It was 1/4 dawn, all the Who's still abed, all the Who's still as news, when he packed up his sled, packed it up with their presents, the ribbons, the wrappings, the tags, and the tinsel, the trimmings, the trappings, 3,000 feet up the side of Matt Crumpet, he rode with his load to the tip-top to dump it. "Pooh-pooh to the Who's," he was Grinchishly humming. "They're finding out now that no Christmas is coming. They're just waking up. I know just what they'll do. Their mouths will hang open a minute or two. Then the Who's down in Whoville will all cry boo-hoo." "That's a noise," grinned the Grinch, "that I simply must hear." So he paused, and the Grinch put his hand to his ear, and he did hear a sound rising over the snow. It started in low. Then it started to grow. But the sound wasn't sad. Why, this sound sounded merry. It couldn't be so, but it was merry. Very. He stared down at Whoville. The Grinch popped his eyes. Then he shook. What he saw was a shocking surprise. Every Who down in Whoville, the tall and the small, was singing, without any presents at all. He hadn't stopped Christmas from coming. It came. Somehow or other, it came just the same. And the Grinch, with his Grinch feet ice cold in the snow, stood puzzling and puzzling. How could it be so? It came without ribbons. It came without tags. It came without packages, boxes, or bags. And he puzzled 3 hours, till his puzzler was sore. Then the Grinch thought of something he hadn't before. Maybe Christmas, he thought, doesn't come from a store. Maybe Christmas perhaps means a little bit more. And what happened then? Well, in Whoville they say that the Grinch's small heart grew 3 sizes that day. And the minute his heart didn't feel quite so tight, he whizzed with his load through the bright morning light. And he brought back the toys, and the food for the feast, and he himself, the Grinch, carved the roast beast. Every Who down in Whoville loved their Christmas Who feast, with pudding so splendid, and rare Who roast beast. But the Grinch, who'd grown kinder with heart open wide, found himself with a problem he just couldn't hide. The Whos, in their joy, had grown much too inviting. Each year their great feasts became more exciting. The Grinch liked the Whos. He liked Max by his side. He liked roast Who beast with a pinch of Who spice. But the pudding, oh dear, it was love at first bite. It was creamy, delicious, and utterly right. 1 bite turned to 2, then 2 into 3. And soon he was hooked on that pudding, you see. Every Christmas he'd eat till he could no more, then hoard a few bowls just to take out the door. But this year, the Whos had a terrible plight. Their pudding was missing on Christmas Eve night. The pots were all empty, the pantry laid bare, and not one single pudding was found anywhere. The pudding is gone, Cindy Lou Who declared. We'll have no Who dessert, not a bite to be spared. The Whos began searching. They scoured the town, they turned over cupboards, their faces in frowns. And meanwhile, up high in his home on the peak, the Grinch sat with Max, trying not to look meek. For stacked in his cave, in bowls, tins, and jars, were puddings enough to be seen from the stars. I couldn't help it, he moaned, patting his tum. The pudding's too good, I needed some. Max gave a small bark, and the Grinch sighed. You're right, I've got to return this and fix things tonight. So he strapped on his sleigh and packed up the goods, with Who pudding towering as high as the woods. He slid down to Whoville as stealthy as could be, to sneak back the pudding and set the Whos free. But just as he reached the first Who pudding pot, he slipped on some snow. Oh dear, what a spot. The pudding went flying, it soared through the air, and splat! It exploded all over the square. The Whos ran outside to the site of the mess, with pudding on rooftops, on lampposts no less. And there stood the Grinch, his face green and red, with pudding dolloped on top of his head. I'm sorry, he cried. I've eaten too much. This pudding, you see, has a magical touch. I couldn't resist, but I'll make it all right. I'll whip up more pudding this very night. The Whos, though surprised, weren't angry at all. Cindy Lou laughed aloud. Oh, Grinch, what a fall. You love our Who pudding. Why didn't you say? You're welcome to join us and eat it each day. But, said the mayor, there's one little hitch. We'll need you to help make a new pudding batch, quick. The Grinch donned an apron and started to bake, with Max as his sous chef. A whisk he did take. They boiled and they stirred, they spiced and they stewed, with every Who helping in bright Christmas mood. By morning, the square had a pudding so grand, it was the biggest dessert in all of the land. And the Grinch learned a lesson, as sweet as could be. It's better to share joy than to steal it for free. He joined the great feast, with a smile most bright, and helped serve the pudding on Christmas Eve night. So now every year, in the heart of the town, the Grinch makes Who pudding, the best all around, and every who cheers, from the young to the old, for their pudding-filled Christmas, worth its weight in gold.